missing one, but there she is. So the shows that we've been doing this week have been part of Science Week. So we've had some people show up thinking they're going to see a load of experiments, which we did not do. The whole point of these shows and the workshops that we did was to explore the themes of light and sound through performance. So I'm going to hand you over to Dara, and they're going to explain to us their background in relation to being a lighting technician.
I'm Dara. I have been a theatre maker / manager and practitioner for about 4 years now. Mostly I do everything behind the scenes, lighting included, which is my favourite. What else? Like, lights are cool.
But how does it work in relation to the creative performance and lighting? Is it a situation that the director says to you, I want this, this, and this? Do you come in and sort of read the script and get a feel for it? Like, how does that collaboration work? Because obviously directors have a very clear idea of what they want.
What they want versus what can actually happen is a very tale as old as time. That's pretty much the job of managers and technicians, is just to bring reality into theatre, which directors and especially designers have a hard time doing. Mostly I would come in and know either very little or I'd know the basics of what's going to happen in each part of the play. And then I would go to the desk, see what the rig is, which is what lights are actually up already, and try with what I can to make the director's dream come true. I mean, sometimes it really depends on the venue and like what you can do.
Yeah. And with this show in particular, I was here earlier when you were doing your rehearsal and you were doing all the cues and all that sort of thing. How much time would you normally have to put into a show in relation to building the lighting that goes into it?
It really depends again. It depends on the scale of the show and how many tech days you have.
Right.
Something like this, we did it in like, less than an hour, 40 minutes. Especially when it depends on the show. Some shows have way more technical aspects than others. And this one is easy enough, so it's easy to bash out. But usually you need like 2 days, especially when you're doing more high production and long plays, then you could be in tech for like 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days to do lights, woohoo.
Okay. And in relation to live performance versus, say, film, obviously I read I can't remember who said it, but someone said that the most impressive lighting and sound in film is the ones that you don't notice.
Oh yeah.
With live performance, obviously, I was sat up near the desk, so I could hear you clicking away with the switches and things like that. But how important do you think the lighting is to the overall sense of the show?
Everything. Lighting is everything. And I'm not joking. Like, as in, you don't have a play if you don't have lights. Kind of the basics. And that's even if you are an outdoor performer, you're outside, you still have lights, the sun.
Yeah.
It's the most important part. Without light, you literally wouldn't be able to see what's happening on stage. But it also provides things like mood, atmosphere, but also what the audience should be feeling in response to what they're seeing. It's kind of a lot of background psychological.
So do you feel that you create the mood as much as the actors do?
Oh, I think more.
More, okay.
If you see something, if you saw the exact same monologue in like red lighting, you're gonna think something very different than if you saw it in the brightest fluorescence you've ever seen. It subconsciously adds meaning and texture to what you're seeing, even if you are not consciously aware of what's being lit, of the conscious decision maybe to throw orange in to give a bit of warmth. These little subconscious cues provide a lot without being verbal components, I guess. like it's all subtextual and you don't know it, but it's happening.
Right, okay. I'm going to bring in Rory Nichols. He is
Thank God.
our sound engineer. He just ran here. He's in rehearsals for another show. So he has been working on the shows with us and some of the workshops that we've done in relation to sound. So I'm just going to ask you if you're all right.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to ask you basically the same questions, but
Yeah.
obviously in relation to sound with a stage production, people aren't mic'd unless it's a musical, for example. But obviously sound is much more important probably in film and television. But in relation to performance, how do you work sound into a live performance when it's so heavily reliant on the dialogue anyway?
Well, see, I suppose that's an interesting one for me, specifically the way that I work. I know that there's other sound designers who work slightly differently, but for me, the most important thing for me is, and has been for the last few years as I've been doing this and trying to refine my method. Sound guy, you should think I should know this one. Alas. But for me, a lot of it has been about the liveness of sound. So for me, I brought into the sound workshop. I don't know if there's anyone here who was at the sound workshop earlier this week. But what I did in there was I basically made like a live sound board. You know, these sound boards you see like online where you can go on, there's like fart noises and sirens and things. And yeah, you know, that sort of thing. Oh, good stuff. So I have a version of that, which I basically designed with different types of atmospheric kind of noises, background noises, different kind of sounds you could trigger. And the idea for me is that I like to do my sound design in the room with the actors in rehearsals. And I like to keep that sound as modular, as changeable as possible. So that's why I sort of started originally. When I started doing a lot of sound, I was using like DJ controller, like DJ decks, because I liked the fact that you had very tactile controls. You could use your hands. You could have sample pads that were just there at the touch of a button. You could loop certain sounds. And then obviously for music as well, it made life a lot easier for that. You had different types of filters. Just everything was kind of right in front of you. But yeah, I think that's the difference with sound in theater versus, say, with film or TV. Film and TV are essentially doing sound for something that's already happened. So you're adding stuff in. Whereas the exciting thing for me with live theater and doing live sound is that you can give the actors something to work off of in the moment. And it might not be exactly the same. You know, every play is different every night. The beats are a little bit different. You know, the movement is different. The energy is different. The audience might be different. Something that might be a comical moment at one point might be, you know, a sad moment, tragic moment the next. So I think that's what's interesting to me about the difference between live sound versus sound for like TV or film.
Okay. I asked Dara earlier, I was like, how does the collaboration process work for the sound designer with the director? Because obviously the director has their vision, their plan, all that sort of thing. Do you normally come in at the start of the rehearsal? Do you come in sort of like halfway through? Like how do you normally prefer to work in relation to a show?
Well, definitely for myself, I like to be at the table read. If there's a table read kind of towards the beginning of the rehearsal process, I think that definitely helps, you know, to get an understanding of the beats, the rhythms, the kind of general vibe that you're going for. But of course, all that can completely change with the actors being in rehearsals for maybe a couple of weeks. And with sound, you're kind of usually dipping in and out. But I like to spend at least a couple of days in the room during rehearsals, just being able to, like I said, just try things out live, see how they work. You know, you're not thinking about levels or anything. You know, it's not a technical thing at that point. At that point, it's still purely a sort of artistic, creative endeavor. You're just trying to see what works, trying to feel it out. And but yeah, usually I'd like to do that. And then it's interesting working with directors. And I used to be quite bad. You know, I kind of let a director be talking and say, "This is what I want to do," and the director would say, "No, I think I want like the sound of like an accordion, you know, but like an accordion from hell, you know what I mean? like an accordion that's sort of a bit like a train or something." And I'd be like, "Yeah, sure. I know exactly what you mean by that. Yeah, no, for sure." And I kind of let them, you know, steamroll me a bit. But I heard a great line from another friend of mine, Ulton Stanley, who's an amazing sound designer who we've worked with a few times. And he had a great line where he always says, if he's not sure about what a director is saying, he'll always say, "Okay, and what are you trying to achieve by doing that?" Right. You know? And it's so effective because then immediately they say, "Well, I think it might add a sort of a sense of suspense or a sense of, I don't know, you know, contempt or a sense of, and they'd find a feeling, and then he'd say, okay, great, well, now I know what you mean. That's what you're looking to create. Then I, as the sound designer, will design the sound to come up with that feeling, instead of just sort of taking the director's, offhand comments about what they think it would sort of be kind of like not like this, not like this, but maybe something like that, And
in relation to sound, like you talked about the feeling, I remember reading an interview with Steven Spielberg, and he said none of his films would exist unless John Williams had put music to it.
Yeah.
You can, if you watch the scene from E.T. of the bikes going across the moon, on mute, it doesn't really hit you in the same way. But when the music is overlaid with it draws out a lot more emotion from it.
Yeah.
So when you're building sound, are you trying to get emotions? Obviously there's just sound effects like, a door closes or something like that.
Absolutely.
But with more specific sound, are you trying to draw out emotions from the audience?
I have an interesting, just as you were saying that, I remembered there's an interesting example of that. Recently in Edinburgh this year, we were over a company I co-founded a couple of years ago, Jack's Bandit Theatre. We had a show over there called Hyper, which it was about kind of hyper pop and trans voices and identity and that sort of thing. And but like the music was really central to it. So there was a lot of original music, kind of hyper poppy, techno-y, electronic music, EDM-y sort of stuff in it. And there was a scene in particular where the main character, Saoirse, she's this trans girl, and she goes into the bathroom, and she's basically just in the bathroom, and then there's a whole conversation that she has with a cis woman who's also in the bathroom, and she basically says, it kind of becomes suspicious, and she gets clocked, and then there's this whole confrontation. I won't go into the scene too much because it would take too long to explain. But in this scene in the bathroom, we were trying to find some way of having that energy, because it was a tense scene as it was to begin with. But then I found the ultimate solution that actually seemed to be really handy. I was using the DJ decks I mentioned earlier, and I essentially just did I always get confused between a high pass and a low pass filter. Not that it matters. The one that goes that one. So I did that filter on it.
Do that again.
Anyway, and so I did that filter on it, and so it made sense because they were in a bar or a club, and so it's the music that's outside the room. But what I found was interesting was just filtering that up, like not even a lot, but just slightly bringing in more and more of it, so it would get a bit louder, a bit more biting, and a bit less mellow, and you kind of could use that to bring up the tension, then bring it back down again, and then let it go a bit, and then build it again. And we found it was really, really effective in that scene. That's definitely an example of a scene that would have just been a perfectly interesting, dramatic scene otherwise between two characters. But I think with the music, the way that it added time and place, first of all, of course. You were in this club and with the lights and everything as well.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to turn to the cast now. Sorry, I'm blocking you. I don't know my stagecraft. We'll start with Dervla. Hello. Huge thank you to them for staying back. Obviously, this was a collaborative process between the five of them. All of our second years did a show this week, so they're all split up into groups of three. The first group was about light, the second group was about sound, and this one got the enviable task of light and sound together. So I'm just going to ask you first about the inspiration for the show. There you go. Crack on.
Inspiration. We kept saying the whole way through this process, can we find the easiest way to do everything? So that was, I don't know if that's inspiration, but that was our motive. That was our mode of work. We started off, we originally had planned to do the only thing that stayed from this original idea was the thunderstorm, which was perhaps underbaked. Originally, it was to start with a thunderstorm and end up with a Bjorn look-alike cruise ship crashing onto a desert island where Bjorn lived, and he was in charge of a lighthouse. So,
how'd that work?
Does that answer your question? So from there. I don't actually remember what the inspiration. Do you want to go to Barry?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, so keeping with the keep everything as easy as possible, we were like, do we have to write this ourselves? No. So then we were like, great, we'll just tell stories that other people have written eventually. So then we looked at like folk tales, and then from the stories, we found ways to tie the stories together and put our own spin on the stories to make it our own.
Very good.
Deb?
Okay.
Anna, if you were watching closely, you might have noticed that we only had one scene.
Okay. Was that intentional?
We meant to do that. So that was repeated.
Okay.
Yeah. So the inspiration initially was Sound and Light.
Yeah.
And then we forgot about that.
Got it.
And then at the end we remembered it. So we were like, let's definitely keep the thunderstorm in.
Did I miss the thunderstorm? Was there a thunderstorm? Oh, at the start, sure. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I thought it was somewhere in the middle. I have to ask you, is it set in hell?
Do I say?
Isn't there like a really famous play where people are in hell? No exit, and hell is other people.
Well, the kids have gone to somewhere else, but the mother doesn't go to that same place. Figure that out for ourselves.
Very clear, thanks, Rose. I'll ask Chris next, sorry, Barry. Your monologue was probably the most emotional.
What do you think?
Yeah. Do you want to talk us through that? Did you come up with it yourself? Did you come up with your stories yourselves? How did that come about?
Yeah. So the stories are kind of all fables or parables or what have you. That particular story originates from Buddhism about Isa Gatani, and it's a real story. So the stories are all kind of conceived, but the actual text we wrote ourselves, and we tried to bring as much of our personal flair to the stories, I would say, more so in the other ones, I think. David and Amber. Yeah, just on the light and sound thing, I would love to be able to do what they do. I can't. This is the easy bit. That's the difficult part, in my opinion. I mean, no, genuinely. There was a story I heard. I think it was the Lord of the Rings. There was a scene in a cave, and they were watching it back and they're saying, "This is supposed to be a cave. It's complete darkness. Yet there's this fucking light coming in and everything." So the guy was watching it went to the lighting designer and said, "I watched that scene in the cave. What's the story about all the light? Where's the light coming from?" And he said, "The same place as the music," which immediately opened up all of those doors and windows for me. But I really like kind of big and dramatic lights and sound as opposed to the natural thing. I don't know where you got that natural thing from. Where was that from?
Emotional.
No, emotional my thing, but the natural lighting is good lighting. I would quietly disagree with that, I'd say.
Okay.
But yeah, they're all from the heart, they're all stories we wanted to tell. And there was elements in there that we kind of had to weave together then for the overall overarching thing towards the end. But did you cry?
No, I'm very stoic. So I was grand. I was a bit shocked she turned out to be the baddie. Because she's so nice.
No, Barry's evil.
Thank you very much, Kitty. Last but not least. Obviously you guys study manifesto as part of your course here, which is creating your own work. How useful did you find that, and how different was this to the manifesto pieces you've done before?
I think many times when we were doing this, we kept on being like, what would Alan say about this? Who's our manifesto teacher? It's quite a scary thought on what he would say. But I think the whole thing was just take what you can from Manifesto. Because I would say that's the class that I've learnt the most in. Yeah, I think it went really well. We did ask Alan to come. He said no. I reckon if we told him our idea, he'd think it was probably not come, yeah. But yeah, I'd say that's the root of this whole thing. Manifesto.
Very good. How long did it take to devise?
Well, it kind of all happened outside on the bench when we came in and went, okay, Bjorn's story, let's see where this goes. Kind of sat in silence and we're like, no, why would you do that? And then, I don't know, how long did it take? I don't think, yeah.
Yeah.
The initial idea came quite quickly. It's like a little light bulb.
Very good. And we get back to the theme of light. Very, very well done. Did you plan that? That's grand. We'll finish up, I suppose. If anybody in the audience has any questions. Yes. I feel like I have a chat show. This is wonderful.
I have a question.
There you go.
It was fantastic. For your stories, did you critique one another, or do you just let you guys go for it? Like, do you give feedback before you finalize?
Thank you. That's one of the biggest things I think all of us have learned in this course, and particular Manifesto, is giving feedback to each other that's useful and asking questions as well that about what is useful. Yeah, that's a big thing that we kind of learn here. So we did, yeah, we to learn not to be precious about our what we've got. We're like, I think when we started in the Gaiety, it was very like you'd kind of guard your good ideas, or you have that feeling that you don't really want to like, oh, well, I'll show you on the day. I want to blow you away. And then it's actually not the way it works at all. It's very collaborative. So every story we told, we kind of got feedback on and helped each other work out the kinks and stuff. So yeah, it was very, very collaborative.
Great. Somebody else have any questions? Yeah, don't be scared. Don't be scared.
What you know the beach theme? What's the origin of that? How did that come about?
Oh, go.
Thank you. Cruise ship. Yeah. That was. Yeah. We're on a cruise ship. There you go. I guess it was because it is like the middle way between. We're all dead, by the way, just to let you know. And it was the kind of, I guess, like this journey between how to get like the passing on, like heaven, hell, that's like good, yeah. And I guess the cruise ship is kind of like this waiting room. It's a bit, you can kind of end up doing the same thing every day on a cruise ship. Get a drink, dance.
Cruise ships are hell on earth, essentially.
Apologies to anybody who's booked a cruise. I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. Did I see somebody in the back have a question? Yes. Ooh. Grand. Sorry. Oh, it's your foot. There you go.
I guess this is a question more for the technicians, but I suppose it's quite a surrealist play. So, something that I was thinking of when I was watching it was the Eric Andre show. Was the lighting was the lighting part inspired by the lighting from that? I know it's a TV show rather than a stage production, but did it ever cross your mind?
Don't answer that yet. Sorry. Hold that thought. There you go.
I wish that I can take credit, but I was just told what they wanted and then I did it. So did you guys think of the Eric Andre show? No. I mean, I think it definitely is similar. I mean, it's hard not to make dramatic lighting changes surrealist or like noticeable, because it's quite noticeable when the light goes to this, you know, it's a very jarring change. So you're going to notice it. So you might as well make it a fun one.
Does anybody else have any questions? Absolutely not. Brilliant. Listen, thanks. Thanks so much for staying. Thank you so much to our technicians, and thanks so much to the cast as well. We really hope you enjoy the show. Just before you leave, the QR code I told you about on the way in is still on the door. So please, please, please do scan that on the way out. It's a really short Google form. We got sponsorship from this from Science Week, so it's really important that we get feedback to give them so we can do it again next year. So please do that on the way out. Otherwise, thank you so much. Have a nice evening. How was your run?
Man, I swear to God, you're asking questions like, I know.